City. And if some of you aren't aware, we offer a course in the fall, Health 413. It's called Refugee and Migrant Health. And it explains why we have refugees here in this country, how we resettle them. We deal with it on a global basis. And you can actually have an opportunity to work with a refugee family. So it was barriers to prenatal care among resettled African refugee women. It was very interesting. Jess will explain those results to you. Basically, women delayed prenatal care for a couple of main reasons. One, which led to her master's research project at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. While she was there, she chose to do her graduate internship since she was focused on global health in Africa. And so she spent 4 months at WHO's African Regional Headquarters in Brazzaville, the Congo, where she really took over their adolescent child health program, and where the church contacted her and said, "We heard you were coming, and can you please tell our church members, the women in the church, about healthy pregnancy?" And again, the needs are great, and I'm sure she'll be touching on that. And then back to the University of Minnesota, where the major research project she finished recently, it's been being written up right now, has to do with the extent of knowledge and understanding in clinical practice, physicians who do OBGYN, nurses, midwives, and so forth, about female genital cutting. And so she has a wide array of these various major domestic and global women's health issues that she'll focus on today. And then, as was mentioned in the poster, if you've seen it around the LSB, her latest major project was giving birth last August to her 2 identical twin daughters. And since they were born in Minnesota, they are the Minnesota Twins. So that's it in a nutshell. She is a dynamic woman. I forgot, she's also been teaching at St. Thomas University in the Twin Cities, where, yes, she's been teaching women's health. She's helped really develop to a better capability an inner city clinic serving women in the low socioeconomic group. Now she's at a much larger health facility in the Twin Cities area. She's responsible for not only her home facility, but some 9 satellite units dealing with every aspect of women's health, pregnancy, testing, treatment, so forth. So it's time I let her tell you everything. She's a wealth of information. So please welcome Jessica Lane.
Can you guys see the PowerPoint okay? On audio. Perfect. I am so excited to be with you guys today. So I was an adjunct professor and developed a women's health course at the University of St. Thomas. And then right before I found out I was pregnant, my husband said, "You know, I really think you should take off next semester. I just have this feeling you should take it off and it's going to be too much for you." And I was like, 2 full-time jobs. I've already got this. I've been doing this for a couple of years. I'll be fine. Well, about a month after he said that, we found out that we were expecting twins. And so I was like, wow, you were very inspired with the time to stop teaching. So I desperately missed it, but 1 full-time job and 2 infants is really enough for probably anybody. But if you want to go beyond that, go for it.
Yes.
Yes.
One other thing I failed to mention, everything that I've touched upon, and she's done even more than that, which would be quite an accomplishment for any woman in these few years. She's done all of that after being diagnosed with a brain tumor.
I did, that's true. So I guess we'll fill you guys in on that part. So he kind of alluded to the fact that I spent perhaps slightly too long at BYU. I don't know if that was the case, but technically I did. So I was here for 6 years, which everyone's saying, "Oh, that sounds normal if you served a mission." I did not serve a mission. Right before I was about to put mission papers in when I was 20, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. My original diagnosis was not optimistic, and so I ended up withdrawing from classes and having to go home as we underwent a lot of testing for a while. I returned the following semester against doctor's orders because I'm stubborn, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. We can have that conversation later. So I was a little stubborn and said, you know what? I'm going back. I'm not just going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs as we attempt to figure out what's going on. I have a life to lead, which was a great mindset, but did not turn out so well for the grades, in which case I had a few classes to repeat, in all honesty. The brain tumor also made me switch what I was studying. I originally came in as a public relations major. I'd done a lot of the work in high school, figured it would be exciting. Got there and found out that my senior project was something I had already done in high school, so basically I was going to be bored for 4 years. And so instead I'm like, well, I'll pick something else. I did international relations, which a lot of people went to law school after. If any of you are going to law school, that's fantastic. It was not for me. And so I kind of had this identity crisis at the same time as the brain tumor, and then was like, you know what, I planned to go to med school originally, like, let's just go back to health, and took a health class. So that's where we're at. Tonight we're going to talk about women around the world and a lot of various issues. It's a lot of material to cover in a short amount of time. Dr. Cole alluded to some of the research I've done. I'm going to touch more on that actually on Friday, just due to time. I'll tackle a couple of things, but not a ton. So I feel like the introduction was pretty thorough. This is the picture that you guys have been seeing on your posters, if you've paid attention, and it has a story behind it, but I'm not going to tell you what the story is until the end. But this picture to me represents women's health in its entirety. And I'll explain why at the end. So it was also mentioned that I have a latest project, actually so Dr. Cole and I go way back. I took every class he ever taught, and he actually attended my wedding, which is a big deal, because it wasn't that big. And then when I told him I was pregnant, I actually told him that I had a new project, which was kind of fun, because at the time we didn't even know it was twins. I just told him, hey, guess what I'm expecting, so I guess I'll be a little bit busier. And little did I know. So this is Sophia and Charlotte in the picture on the green print background. Sophia's on your left, Charlotte's on your right, and then in the picture in their Sunday dresses, which are supposed to be 6 to 12 months, but I have petite daughters apparently, because I promise they got hands. They just look like they don't. They're swapped, so Charlotte's on your left and Sophia's on your right. And then I figured I should probably stick a picture of my husband in there, because otherwise he might feel bad. So he's important too. All right, so tonight we're going to cover basic regions, and that's kind of how we're going to go through the PowerPoint, is looking through a lot of information, but going through various regions first. So we're going to start off with Africa. Africa is probably going to take the longest amount of time. One, because it's near and dear to my heart, and two, it has a lot more women's health issues, really, than any other region in the world. So, as it was mentioned, I ended up taking a 4-month position with the World Health Organization in Brazzaville, Congo. My understanding is I was the first Caucasian American they've ever had in the office who's female. And it was very interesting. I was originally brought in to work on maternal mortality and neonatal deaths, which is something that I felt like I had this handled. I was going to be good. Yes, I was in a new country, but I had this. And like most global work, if any of you have done it, I got called into my supervisor's office 2 days later, and he goes, what do you know about adolescent health? I taught sex ed a couple of times. Literally, that was my response, and that's about all I knew. And he's like, well, he said, we have a great need. He's like, you're now the adolescent health specialist. I'm like, right, with intern, right? Intern? And he's like, no, you're it. He's like, so everybody in the region, which was 46 countries, are coming to you. And I was like, they're significantly older than I am. And he's like, oh, they won't know that over the phone. So I proceeded to play the role of the adolescent health specialist for all of Africa for a period of 4 months over there, and then continued to work with them for the following year. So that was kind of exciting. It's one way to get really good information for your resume. Just get tossed into it. So here's a picture of some classes I was teaching to the community. Just thought it was fun. As far as lecture style, if you have a question, just pop your hand up. That's generally the best way to go rather than wait until the end. I don't really get thrown off train with that too often. Could happen. And then, trying to think if there's anything else you should know. It's more of a conversation, so if you have any questions, even if it's like on my background or what's it like to have twins, I really don't mind. I'm kind of an open book, so feel free to ask anything. Any questions right now? All right, so background on Africa. This may sound right, humorous to you, but I cannot tell you how many people think Africa is a country. Literally, they think it's one large country. So we're all in college. I knew you all knew better, but pass it along to your friends because they may not. Officially, there's 54 countries located in Africa and then 2 disputed areas. One thing to note is that 40% of females in Africa are under 15 years of age. So we have a huge child and adolescent population, and we're going to have a lot more issues around maternal issues, as well as aging as that group gets older, because we are finding that the under 5 mortality is being improved. So women comprise just over half of the population. Life expectancy for the region is 61, but it can vary from 49 years in Chad to 77 years in Morocco. Just like, I'm sure a lot of you are from different parts of the United States, things differ from west to east, north to south. And Africa, of course, with multiple countries would be the same way. So first of all, I have to say I have a couple of former classmates of mine and friends who are here, and then also my brother in attendance. So if you saw me like really hugging a guy earlier, it's my brother. We're related. I feel like I should have said that. Some people are looking at me like, wow, she got really excited. Anyway, all right, so education, 67% of girls attend primary school, but almost half of women 15 and over are illiterate. So attending primary school the way that that's measured is not super accurate, and it could be simply that they attended for a year, for example, or they went intermittently, which we know doesn't really help anyone. I mean, it's better than nothing, but not much. And 1 in 39 will die as a result of pregnancy. This graph I made because I wanted you guys to see how much the population is skewed. So you can see that the under 15 is a fairly large group. Then you have your 15 to 64, and your seniors are a teeny tiny fraction of the African population. Part of this is due to, of course, life expectancy, and we'll go to some of the issues with that. And part of it is because they have very high fertility rates, and so it kind of skews the population to be a little bit younger. Within each region, I picked 4 countries to kind of focus on that would be diverse. We don't have time. I don't want to keep clumping the region together. Oh, this is what the average is, because that's not really helpful. I want you to see how the differences are. So I chose the Congo, of course, because I've worked and lived there. I chose Libya because it's all over the news, and I'm sure that a lot of people have some assumptions that are most likely incorrect. Sierra Leone I chose because I've worked a lot with the population from there, and Somalia the same thing. Minnesota actually has the largest Somali population outside of Somalia, and so I work frequently with these people and wanted to kind of go over their information as well. So primary education, which would be our equivalent of up through like grade 5, is generally free in most countries. However, the females especially have 2 roles they can take before they would go to school. They can either take over the household duties, which would then free up the mother to go make money, or they can actually make money themselves. So there is not an incentive to put the girls in school, especially in your poorest communities, because you're better off using that body to either help raise children, gather water, make the food, or to put her out in the marketplace selling coal, selling vegetables, whatever it may be. So graphs like this are meant to show you how incredibly drastic things are throughout the region. A lot of times it's clumped together with statistics, but it's entirely different. So you can see Somalia, a very small fraction of women are attending primary school, where in the Congo it's, not all, but it's definitely a majority. Literacy rates, and these are available, as many statistics as were available is what's included in here. So again, you can see most likely as a result of not really attending school, the literacy rate for women is, significantly lower. So are there any interesting things when you see this graph as you compare adult to adolescent? Anybody notice anything that kind of sticks out like, that's not exactly how I saw that going? I'm hearing some mumbles. Anybody? We really are going to talk tonight, so at some point someone's going to raise their hand. What would you expect? Would you expect that the adult population has higher literacy rates or the adolescent? Adolescent. Is that true for all these countries? No. Why might that be? Where are the countries? Do you know something about, yes?
Do they have high conflict in those countries, like a lot
Yes.
of war and things going on?
Yes, you hit it exactly. So the countries where we've actually seen a drop from the adult literacy rate is higher than what the adolescent is because they've recently been in civil war or are currently in war. So what happens when there's conflict? Less people are going to school, girls especially, but both sexes, and you end up actually seeing people decline with their education across the board, whether they're female or male. So yes, exactly. So right now, it's based that with the conflict going on, that 2.8 million children are missing out on education, and obviously that number is increasing every single day. I don't want this to be an entire lecture of doom and gloom. It may come across that in some moments. But right now there's 2 Syrian women who are teaching children to read, write, and count, so your basic necessities in order to get through life, in a tent for 4 hours a day using paper, pencils, and crayons that have been donated. And this is a picture. They recently got some new backpacks from UNICEF, and they are clearly very excited to get their school supplies. So there's hope, but we still have a lot of issues. All right, maternal mortality. Africa has the worst maternal mortality in the world. Part of this, as I mentioned previously, is high fertility rates, poor health conditions, traditional midwives, and early marriages. We're going to talk about all these. Here in the United States, it's actually interesting to note. So I gave a lecture that had similar numbers, I think it was about 2 years ago. And in the United States, maternal mortality at that point was 1 in 2,400. We've now dropped 600 slots in 2 years. So I know you've covered a lot here in the U.S., but I just want you to be aware that the U.S. is actually not the safest place to have a baby. I saw a couple of you who are pregnant. Please don't panic. But I gave birth here. I'm fine. But at the same time, it is alarming that as a developed country, we can't seem to get past some of our peers who would come across as being less developed. Somalia, obviously, substantially higher than we are, 1 in 18. Sierra Leone is 1 in 21, 1 in 48. So if you were to break that out based on the size of the room for Somalia, you're looking at approximately 3 to 4 people, is my guess, in this room that would die from trying to have a baby or a complication during pregnancy. Okay, I want to put these numbers into perspective, and we'll talk about what these numbers mean at the end. Okay, fertility rates. Again, it's going to differ immensely. Libya is one where the fertility rate is about the same as what it would be here in the United States. The United States is just slightly less. Where in Somalia, it's substantially higher, and it fluctuates in there. So, things that contribute to that. Contraception. You can see that Somalia has one of the lowest rates. So this is a survey that looks at any type of contraception. So that would include your natural methods as well. So it could be that it is, religiously sound to use them. It's using the calendar method, things like that. I don't know if you cover those in class. Yes. So this would include your more natural methods as well, any type. And you can see that the rates are substantially lower than what they should be. And same with the Congo. Then another issue is the percent of births attended by a doctor, nurse, or midwife. They have a lot of traditional birth attendants, but a lot of the times it's an older woman in the community who happens to have delivered many children and is not actually trained to do such. There's been some scenarios, I know I was doing some training where we were asking this older woman, she delivered a lot of babies, what do you do when the baby comes? And she was explaining how she ties up the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord has to be cut. And she was explaining that she uses the same scalpel, or the same razor blade every single time on every single baby. And so we were asking her, well, is there anything you do with that razor blade in between? And she's like, well, if I have time, I might boil it, but it doesn't always happen. An issue, right? Yeah. So training is going on, it's getting better, but there's still a long way to go. Child labor, so this is going to be, I just want to give you the definition of what they consider child labor. So if the child is between 5 and 11 years, you're looking at 1 hour of economic activity per week or 28 hours of chores. And if it's 12 to 14, then it's 14 hours of economic activity or 28 hours of chores. But it doesn't sound maybe like a lot, but if you think about that 12 to 14-year-old, they're basically holding down a part-time job. Okay? I'm sure some of you have part-time jobs, so kind of put that in perspective. So Obviously, the percent of children who are child laborers is going to vary as well. The Congo is a little bit lower, which makes sense why your education rates would be a little bit higher. Another thing I've included in each of these is wife beating. This is a relatively new statistic that international organizations want to use to attempt to measure violence against women. So it was surveyed both males and females, adults and adolescents, to see, okay, do you think a husband is justified in hitting or beating his wife for at least one of the following? If his wife brings the food, argues with him, goes out without telling him, neglects the children, or refuses sexual relations. If you think that a woman can be beat for just one of these reasons, let alone many of them, then you would mark yes. Surprising. Surprising. Again, we're looking at adult to adolescent. Do you notice anything about comparing these numbers between adults and adolescents? Yes?
It seems like, that at least in Sierra Leone, the adults are like, I don't think this is good, I don't want this.
Yes. That's exactly what I wanted to point it out. So, Congo, the numbers are basically equal as far as what we can tell. Somalia, a little bit of a difference. Sierra Leone, a little bit less. But this gives us hope that maybe this is changing. Maybe we're teaching adolescent, these are adolescent females, teaching adolescent females that they should not expect to be beat if they, burn dinner by accident. Things happen. So we're making progress, but clearly we have a long way to go. So, and it really was amazing. When I was living in the Congo,